Hello and welcome to Dermis Mondays. I'm Craig. Want to start off by saying happy birthday to you, to Ali Whitty. It's his birthday today. It's a big one. He's 40, so he gets a free pass. He gets a night off tonight for free. So happy birthday, Ali. This week I thought I would talk about the Beatles Get Back documentary, and I'm a wee bit late to the party with this one. It was recommended to me by a friend, Craig Brownlee. Thanks, Craig, for recommending it to me. I watched it really quickly and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I'd say right off the bat that it's probably the best music documentary I've ever seen. There's all these biopics out now. Rocket Man, the Queen one. I heard there's a David Bowie one in the making. At the end of the day, these are movies. You don't know how much is true, how much has been added in. I suppose if you're a super fan, then you'll know loads of stuff. This documentary is all real. Yes, there's editing that's went on, and I'm sure there's certain things that maybe weren't portrayed, as it is high budget, appealing to the widest demographic possible, Disney funded documentary, so I dare say there was some stuff that maybe wasn't portrayed. That said, there is a lot of footage in this documentary. It can be quite a challenging watch sometimes, I have to admit. But if you're someone that watches this channel on the regular, you'll probably manage to tolerate it. There's some amazing moments. So I went into the documentary not being a huge Beatles fan. I think it's hard to deny that they wrote some of the greatest songs probably ever. I think their catalogue's a bit hit and miss, personally. I find it hard to get into the really early stuff. But after watching this documentary, it kind of proves a lot of theories I had about them. One being that they are just people, they're not gods. There's nothing that anyone else couldn't do. I do believe that. Like, yeah, they're hugely talented guys, but this shows that really what comes from them is that they put in the hours, they put in the time, they put in the practice, they've got the dedication, and that's what makes the difference. And you see that really comes across in this documentary. Quick premise: the documentary starts off and it kind of gives you a wee background to the Beatles and their history leading up to this album, which is Let It Be, their last album that came out. It's not the last album they recorded. They've got the idea that they're going to do a TV special and perform it all live, and they're going to play all new songs. Previously the recordings were all a wee bit separate, like they all had their own songs and they weren't really working like a proper band anymore. So I think they wanted to prove they could still be a band because they stopped touring. They start in this TV studio writing songs together. Eventually plans change. I don't want to spoil it, but they end up in the Apple building where they set up a temporary studio. Apple was their record label at the time, their own one that they made, which was in financial ruin at the time. They end up playing a rooftop gig in London on top of their studio building, which is the first performance since their last tour, and it's also their last performance that they play in public, which is really interesting. So throughout this, the TV special turns into a documentary, and you can tell like there was 150 hours of footage, which Peter Jackson's done loads of stuff, probably most famously Lord of the Rings. He has restored this footage. The quality of the footage is incredible. That is one of the most amazing things I've took away from this. Apparently, like, it's only recently that the technologies really became available to bring this footage up to the level that it's at, and the audio as well. I believe there was a lot of audio production work went in to restore it to sound to a good quality. It's a 7-hour documentary. It's huge. It takes a long while to get through. I would really, especially if you're really interested in music, I would recommend you power through it because it is quite a rewarding watch. It's amazing. It's just like a total time capsule. Takes you right back to the 60s. There's the amazing outfits. There's just naturalness of, you watch a lot of stuff set in the 60s. It doesn't capture it like this does. You have preconceptions of who the Beatles are, and watching this, it just totally blows it all out the water. Going in, I thought George Harrison was like the main musical guy, like with the most musical knowledge from a technical point of view, but that wasn't true. Impression I got, it was Paul McCartney that was the kind of driving force at this period of their career. He is the one that's constantly pushing for them to keep writing, keep working together, but at the same time he comes across as quite domineering, which causes a lot of friction with George Harrison, who at the time he's just developing his songwriting. I say just developing, he wrote some incredible songs during the making of it. You can see Paul and John, they have a really special relationship in terms of the thinking on a musical level that is just way above the rest of the band members. Well, in my opinion, the person that I changed my opinion on the most from watching this was Ringo. I always thought of Ringo as this kind of easygoing guy, didn't have too much input. I thought he'd be the funny man, and I thought he would be the one that, like the referee of the band, and I thought Lennon and McCartney would really clash. That isn't how it went down at all. Ringo is really quiet throughout this, and it's really interesting. He just sits there, does his drumming, like when they ask him, and he always comes up with a great part. You hear so many things about him being a bad drummer, which I knew wasn't true. Like I knew he was a good drummer. He just comes across as a total professional in this documentary. There's a bit where he whispers, I think it's George Martin, he whispers to, they're having an argument about playing on the rooftop, and he whispers to him that he's just farted and he just wanted to let him know. There's moments like that where you're just like, this is amazing. A good 3/4 of this documentary is just them having fun, having a carry on, seeing them do things that I do myself as a creative person. When I try and sing, sometimes I like try and reach a note and I can't hit it. When I watch this, they do that. I can really relate to it. As a songwriter, when I'm watching it, I'm just like, wow, you know, the creative process is just so real. It's nothing that no one else isn't capable of. Yeah, the difference is that they've got years of just doing that and just working together as a band. It shows that that's what it's all about. It's about doing it. It's about working away and just powering through your mistakes and having fun primarily. John Lennon, he came across as the funny man of the band and the kind of bad boy. I knew he was a bit of a rebel, but I always thought of him as more quiet, smart kind of person, you know. But he's really funny during this documentary. Yoko's there, she just kind of sits with John most of the time. McCartney makes a joke about how Yoko will be remembered as the person that split up the Beatles, even though she's not really done anything. And watching the documentary, it's kind of true. She doesn't really intrude, I wouldn't say, too much. There's some really funny bits with them playing really badly and just screaming and like making noises on their guitar and just having fun with their instruments. I don't know, I never expected the creative process to be like that at all. There is moments of them being horrible to each other as well, which is really entertaining, I have to say. There's secret conversations that have been recorded, and they've just made up some kind of basic footage just to overlay over the top of it. You can really tell Peter Jackson's built a storyline out of this. The actual rooftop gig itself, I'm definitely going to be rewatching that soon. It's so entertaining. It is so good. The police come up and try and stop them and stuff like that. I don't want to ruin too much, but the whole time I was watching it, I was just like, I would love to do that. It's so rock and roll, all of it. The songs they play on the roof are really good as well. It gives you an insight into how things went sour. There's comments about Alan Klein, who was the Rolling Stones manager at the time. It doesn't show you it directly in the documentary, but John Lennon meets with him and is really interested in him becoming the manager of the band. He went on to basically end the Beatles because he became the manager. McCartney wasn't on board with him as a person, and that resulted in McCartney leaving the band. Klein, the manager, he ended up in jail. If anyone knows the album by the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street is when they got exiled for not paying their taxes. That Alan Klein manager guy is the reason why, basically, because he wasn't paying the taxes for the Rolling Stones. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of history going on here. During the rooftop performance, they're interviewing people and they're like, I don't really like the Beatles that much. There's a wee woman, she just woke up and she's like, oh, you've just got me out of my bed, you know, I really don't like this, it's a racket and all that. There's like two girls that stand outside the Apple building that fancy Paul. One of my favourite things was seeing Glenn Johns record them. If you don't know who he is one of the most legendary recording engineer, producer guys going. He worked on everything, you name it, pretty much. Another person you see in it is Alan Parsons, who's just operating the tapes. He worked on Dark Side of the Moon 3 years after this with Pink Floyd. There's a lot of sleazy suit people kicking about. It's quite interesting to see how Beatles treat them. I have to admit, after watching this, all I've done is listen to Let It Be. It's coincided with a re-release of Let It Be album for a remix, because the album was mixed by Glenn Johns. It got rejected by the Beatles and it got given to Phil Spector, who pretty much, a lot of people would say, ruined it by putting strings on all the songs and changing the mixes and stuff like that. When Glenn Johns captured the band, what they sound like. The original version of the album isn't on it, which is quite a shame, because I was wanting to compare the old Phil Spector mix with the new Giles Martin mix. So Giles is the son of George Martin, who George Martin was the long-term producer of the Beatles. He produced most of their albums. Glenn Johns was just brought in more as an engineer to capture this kind of live performance, because that was his bag. Glenn Johns, he was more of a kind of live in the room, one take Jake kind of guy. So it's amazing to see him with all his 60s equipment, the old desk and the old speakers. There's some really funny moments where you think, like, why not just do the obvious thing? They're recording in the studio and they're wanting everything played back through a PA system so they can hear what they're playing and what they're recording. Obviously they're recording with mics, so the speakers are feeding back into the mics. Like, that's just basic stuff, but they're complaining how much it's feeding back, but they want the speakers to be louder so they can hear what they're doing. And he's like, well, I can't turn the speakers up without it feeding back, surely that's obvious. But yet, the whole time I'm just thinking, surely you can just wear headphones. I know these are the Beatles, but like, what's up with just wearing headphones? There's so many moments like that. It's just like, wow. They've got like a wee guy that just gets some toast and marmalade all the time. That seems to be the go-to Beatles diet, is just toast and marmalade. They've all got their wee individual toast racks. Like I said, the actual rooftop performance, I was really impressed with how that came across. I love the style it was edited with the paneling, like the Let It Be album cover. And that's almost got a storyline to it itself. It's amazing the amount of footage that was actually captured for it. They had cameras up on the roofs. They had a hidden camera in the office where the police come in and stuff like that, and then they're interviewing people on the street and stuff like that as well. So it looks like it was filmed yesterday. I would say, if you're going to watch it, make sure you've got a good way of playing back the audio, good headphones, or, you know, don't just watch it on your phone. I don't think you'll appreciate it as much. For me, recontextualizes the whole back catalogue of the Beatles. Can't hear it the same now, which is really great. Got a lot more respect for them, definitely, and a lot more understanding. I like to slag songs like Octopus's Garden, but when you see Ringo come in and write it, it's quite a funny moment, because at the time they're kind of giving George Harrison a lot of slagging for being a bad guitar player. You can see like the hierarchy, like John and Paul are at the top of being the best songwriters, then it's George, and Ringo comes in and he's like playing the piano with Octopus's Garden, and George walks over and he's like, you should go to this chord for the chorus and stuff like that, and they start to write the song. But it's funny to see like George is like pulling rank on Ringo when George just gets slagged rotten for quite a lot of the documentary, to be honest. I think you should go and watch it if you've not seen it, even if you're not a Beatles fan, because I certainly wasn't. I hate to admit that I am. I have to admit that I hate to admit that I'm a Beatles fan now. One thing I really picked up on was Lennon and McCartney really were amazing at singing together. Vocals and harmonies very rarely were poor. I mean, like I said, there's moments where they're kind of like struggling to reach notes and stuff like that. And when you first wake up in the morning, you can't hit the same notes you can hit later on throughout the day. So, dare I miss stuff. Since watching this, I have done nothing but write and record, I have to admit. First thing I done after watching it was bring the computer through to the piano and record some of the piano playing. Paul McCartney does a lot of piano playing in that documentary, and I just thought, I've got a few songs on the piano, I need to work on them, and it shows you like it's all about collaboration. Can't wait to collaborate with the guys on stuff, put in some time and making some new music. If you've not been up to date, 4th of March for the Hug and Pint gig, first gig. I believe there's actually quite a lot of people going by the looks of things. It's a tiny venue, so hopefully it's quite busy. It's a Friday night. It's been Dermis Mondays. I'm gonna go and work on some music. Remember to like, share and subscribe and all that as well. Let us know what you think of the Beatles, because I know it's quite controversial to not like the Beatles, but there is people out there that hate them as well, so let us know what you think. And if you've watched the documentary, did it change your opinion? So thanks. See ya!